Greetings, friends of the apocalypse. This is Podcast Akron Zero. You're home for the apocalypse for episode 56, Lucifer's Hammer. So tonight, we've got hammer fever. We are...
Yeah, that was the term from the book, wasn't it?
It sure was. So we're going to be talking about the classic post-apocalyptic novel, Lucifer's Hammer, done by Larry Niven and Jerry Pournelle. Okay. So we're going to get into that, and before we get into that, the only thing I really have of interest to talk about, to say, because I just want to get into the book, is tomorrow the first DLC for Fallout 4 is coming out. So the autumn, I can't remember what it's called. It's like it's the one about the robots, and basically you're going to now be able to build, customize your own like companion robots. So I'm really excited about this.
Plus there's an adventure built into it, right? There's like the Mechanist has returned from Fallout 3.
Yes.
To be a problem.
Yep. Yes, there is an adventure around it. I think it's more about the add-on, but there is a small adventure, and then I think the next one's just a small DLC. Then there's the big one, which is Far Harbor, which apparently is like the biggest one add-on they've done for Fallout DLC ever. So, yeah. But the one's coming with the robots, so I'm really excited about that. That's coming out tomorrow. So
finally get some of those brain bots back in the rotation.
Yes, they're adding brain bots back, and a couple other ththings that they left out that people were apparently incensed about not having. So they.
I don't remember what else was real left out. Brain bot was the one that always. Again, I get my information secondhand because I have sworn off Fallout until I have finished all my other work.
Yeah, the brain bots were the biggest one, and let's see if the internet could do me right. Let's see here if it tells me real quick what is going to be in there. I think it's blah 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 blah, and this robot companions. This update hasn't told me shit, and all right, let's not worry about let's not worry about that. But yeah, so that's coming out. So that's the only big thing. Nothing else. Well, I did show Scott, and I don't want to move the camera too much. As I finally hung up, if you can see it over my shoulders, guys.
You raise it up just a little bit. Yeah, there you go.
I finally hung up those metal Mad Max and the Road Warrior posters that my wife had gotten me for Christmas. So they're like metal, and they're hung up by a magnet. So they're pretty cool. They're like a minimalist. They're like a minimalist style. So they're pretty cool.
Nancy got those for you.
Yeah.
Oh, you chose well, sir. That was a good. She knew the right stuff to get you.
Well, I give her a lot of ideas, and she's also learning. She kind of learns and knows. She doesn't always follow my list, but it gives her ideas.
Occasionally get socks. Sometimes you get socks.
Socks and underwear. It's like, thanks, love you too, but
Sometimes you get Mad Max stuff. That's all right.
Sometimes you get. It's always good to get Mad Max stuff. So I finally got those hung up in the office. I wanted to put them on the wall of the apocalypse in the front here, but it was getting kind of crowded between the Gamworld poster, the Gamworld world map, my Metamorphosis Alpha poster, my Thundar.
You're doing this wrong. You need to podcast the other direction so everyone can see that.
I know.
But you see the lovely books behind me so that everyone thinks that I am erudite and well-read?
Yeah, but I get to look up and see all this, and it brings me joy.
What good does that do your audience or our audience? You're robbing my audience with your selfishness.
Well, they live vicariously through me, so they're gonna have to feed off of my joy. Okay.
So. Well, there was a time when that was a starvation ration diet, but all right, you seem happier now.
Yes. So folks, we're gonna talk about Lucifer's Hammer, classic book. I read this back in the '80s. Because they're Lucifer's Hammer, and I recently again just reread it. Well, I kind of cheated. I did a combination of Audacity. So I was listening to it like on the way to work and when I was at work, and then at night I would crack open my Kindle and like pick up where I left off like from work and read at night before I went to bed.
That counts.
Yeah, I did back and forth. I worked it the best I could. I did I'd listen on the way to work, and then I'd read some at night and listen during the day. And one of the things that I found I didn't realize at the time when I started to reread it was originally this came out a lot earlier than I thought. It was originally first published in 1977, and it is, upon again rereading it, it is a product. There's a lot of 70isms in this book.
Oh yeah,
honkies and brothers, and it's really.
Oh yeah.
Not again in 1984 when I probably read it, not realizing that, but
there is definitely a soft spot around Alim Nassour, the guy who's the former Black Panther-y style radical who's now just in organized crime. Mm-hmm. He definitely is a soft spot because he completely calls back to that late 60s, early 70s combination of fear of the Black Panthers and then sort of blaxploitation movies.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, a lot of these characters, like a lot of could totally fall out of like a blaxploitation film. It's kind of ridiculous. It's kind of ridiculous in some ways, but again, figuring if this was published in 77, it was probably written in 75. Because
it says copyright. It says copyright 77. So yeah, you're right. This was probably cobbled together for over a year,
and then
minimum.
Then trying to get it published. So it probably came out a little bit earlier because. All right, so let me just stop for a second. So everybody. We are reviewing the book, and we're going to probably review it in a pretty good detail because we love the book. So here's a spoiler for you folks. If you don't want to know a lot of details, even if you hear a lot of details, it's still worth your time to sit down and read it yourself. But just a little spoiler alert, folks. We're going to get into a lot of detail about the book. So one of the things I also discovered when researching the book a little bit was I did not know that in 92 there was a comic adaptation started for Lucifer's Hammer by Innovation Comics. I never even heard of them. Small independent comic book. Now, apparently, it didn't do very well because only 2 of the 6 issues that were planned came out. Okay, so I've seen cover pictures for 3, 4, 5, and 6, but I can't find them anywhere. So I think they probably only published 2. And I can understand why. I mean, I read the 2 comics. It was a decent adaptation, a little modernization on certain ways, but he gets the whole feel of it. But the artwork is it's terrible. I hated it. It is ugly. It is not a pretty comic. I don't like the style. So I can see why it probably wasn't very successful.
I'm a snob about that. It takes some really special writing to overcome terrible artwork, and I will put up with terrible writing because there was good artwork, and then I felt cheap and bad about it later. But
yeah. So it's I could see why it probably didn't do so well, but that came out. So anyway, let's see here. Ford just said something. Oh, he's there. Great. All right. So Lucifer's Hammer. So one thing again I noticed with the book, and I'm sure you could attest to this, is because it's Larry Niven, it's very sciencey heavy.
Oh yes, yeah.
You kind of get it. You kind of get a kind of a light astronomy lesson in this as well when you're reading this book. It's very heavy in the science because like a lot of the first beginning of the book, it's all about the comets and what they are in the galaxy and the this and that. It really gets into the as much as you can in a mass publication, but it gets into science a lot.
Compare that to a lot of post-apocalypse stuff we've written. When weapons turn up, it's a rifle, it's a submachine gun, it's a pistol. There is no information. Larry and Jerry, at least in this, I mean, Purnell goes on to do military SF, but Larry and Jerry do not give a shit what the mag capacity is or what size the ammo is, what type of ammo the weapon carries. They're just moving on with their story. So.
Oh yeah, it's not gun porn like a lot of the post-apocalyptic stuff we've read. Like, it's like he used his 6 Sauer 9, blah blah blah, or his twin Daytonic 45s with the Pacmar grips.
That's the classic. That is the classic every time.
Every time.
That's the twin Daytonics hardballers in 45 caliber with the Pacmar grips.
The Pacmar grips.
It's like a mantra. I've said it before, but anyways, yeah, they don't give a damn about that. The the bad guys turn up. They have mortars. They have bazookas.
Machine guns. They have machine guns.
They have 50 caliber machine guns. I think he says 50s, which is not good. That should
Maybe.
tell you how.
Mainly, they got machine guns. They're carrying machine guns, which are assault rifles. They're very non-specific because it's not important. It's not that important to the story. It's important to know that he said, "Oh, they got machine guns. We got hunting rifles." That's all you need to know. Is that they're outgunned. That's it.
Yeah.
But
Exactly.
I don't get the detail about that. One of the things I did find with, again, rereading this is before the Hammerfall, which is what's called in the book, is when, the comet. Oh, by the way, folks, the comet hits the Earth. So, but
let's back up. Why is it called Lucifer's Hammer?
Okay, well, first of all, it's originally the comet was discovered by a Playboy millionaire amateur astronomer named Tim Hamner with an N. Now, himself and some kid in like Alabama or something discovers the comet. Well, at least it's recognized by the astronomy organizations simultaneously. So the Hamet's called Hamner Brown is what it's originally called. But during, I think, one of the interviews they do, they're talking on like Johnny Carson, and he accidentally calls it the Hammer, or people start calling it Hammer instead of Hamner. So it starts getting around that it's the Hammer, and then there's this radical television or radio evangelist who's called Henry Armitage.
Let's take a moment to unpack the name of the crazy, the insane televangelist for just a second. Where have we heard the name Henry Armitage before, Mr. Wallace?
It sounds so familiar, and it kind of tickles at my brain. Like I kind of know almost what it is.
Could it be the name of the librarian at Miskatonic University who's in charge of keeping the Necronomicon locked away in the short story The Dunwich Horror? Could that be where we've heard it?
No, that would be too easy, and that would also show that we're more than one-trick ponies, and we know more than just the apocalypse. So,
I wonder about that. Whether that is the only name game I could find, except for Peter Jackoff, which we'll get to later.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that looks even remotely like a name game is Henry Armitage, which is a direct quote from. Which is a direct name out of H.P. Lovecraft's the Dunwich Horror, which isn't an apocalyptic novel necessarily, but is about a monster coming down from the stars to fuck our shit up. So I don't know, maybe,
but
crazy Reverend Armitage
starts calling it the hammer of God. Lucifer's hammer is coming to smite. The unbelievers and so forth, your typical, crazy evangelist type, end of the world stuff. So he starts calling it Lucifer's Hammer. And then other people start calling it Lucifer's Hammer. And then, like we said at the beginning, people start getting what they call hammer fever because during the course of the novel, the predictions of it hitting us keep on getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And, people
that is say the chances of it missing.
Or hitting, the chances of it missing are getting smaller and smaller and smaller. It's like, it's a 1 in 10,000 chance, where it was like 1 in a billion at the beginning. But they talk about the comet cleaving, and they really get into, again, he gets into a lot of because again Larry Niven's a major science fiction writer, so you really gives us a little bit of an education if you didn't know anything about comets and what they're made of, at least from a 1975 astronomy knowledge standpoint.
There's a lot of stuff about it. Like I said, cleaving, outgassing.
Yep.
It's not really he makes the point it's not a solid object. It's never been a solid object. It is literally sort of a dense cloud of material that's coming our direction. And as it gets closer to the sun, it causes the outgassing,
which causes the tail,
which causes it to change direction. It's altering its course.
Yep, and because it pulls on it as it's coming towards the sun. The tail isn't behind it. When it comes around, the tail's in front of it because it's the gases. The sun causes the gases and the solar wind, and it pushes the tails out. And during the they're trying to equate it because they're doing documentaries during the course. And they refer to it. They compare it to a hot fudge sundae, so they call it hot fudge Tuesday, because they try to do an analysis of describing what it, like what if it would hit.
Yeah, there's the math thing, right? There's a big guy. They just get rid of a chalkboard, it's like doing the math of what happens if this hot fudge sundae hits the earth.
Called a hot fudge sundae, and basically they're like, so that's what's going to happen. They're like, oh no, the comet's about 10 times bigger than that, or something like that.
Yeah.
So at the beginning of the book, there's a lot of science, there's a lot of explaining like what are comets, and he goes into it a lot. So. But that's one thing I'd say with the book. Up until Hammerfall, things are played out. They're telling the story. But after Hammerfall, I think things start to get a little choppy. There's a lot of time jumps after Hammerfall. I noticed it's like, okay, it's been 2 weeks, it's been 4 weeks. Okay, we're 7 weeks out. Like it's a lot of time hops. Whereas they really kind of drag out a lot of it in the beginning.
Oh yeah, we're not crashing the comment. All right, let's see. I'm looking at a 640-page book.
Yes, it's thick, folks.
The chapter after Doomsday, that is, let's get the roundup on how fucked we are, is page 418. That is 2/3 the way through before this sucker smashes into. Well, I mean, there's about 100 pages of material as the comet is hitting the Earth, obviously. But, describing the world-changing events. But, yeah, it's more than halfway through before we get touchdown.
Yep.
Right?
Because there's a lot to talk about. Because basically what happens is, in the book, folks, is the comet's discovered. They start doing there's a TV. Harvey Randall is the TV documentary maker, and there's a lot of characters in this book, and they all kind of play off each other. Mark Chetsku is his sidekick.
Is that how you pronounce it? Because I could never pronounce that damn Eastern block.
Chetsku. I believe it's Chetsku.
Okay.
You get a lot of characters. They interact in making documentaries, and they're talking to JPL in California. There's Senator Jellison, who is the science space program guy who lives out in California. Senator who helps get a mission. So a lot of the beginning of the book's all about meeting all the characters and how they play into each other. The main focus is the science part and the making of the documentaries, and then how all these characters interconnect with each other.
But it's also about the rising fear. I mean,
yeah,
he puts this slow boil on where it's like, it's not going to happen. We live in denial. We're not going to have rising sea levels, or we're not going to, overpopulate, or we're not going to overpollute, And then you put that frog on for the slow boil, and suddenly, oops, you're in the middle of the apocalypse. This one is kind of the same way, where it's denial of what the possibility is, and so you get to the hammer fever part where people are bugging out of the cities, packing all their stuff and leaving. There's a sort of hysterical flurry at the end. There's all this inertia that has to be overcome, right? Where it's like, Jellicoe Jellison. Jellicoe was a British admiral from Jutland. I don't know why I thought Jellicoe. But Jellison wants to, get that mission with the Russians to observe the comet and get better data so they can make some predictions. And because it's pre-Hubble. There's no telescopes.
Oh, it's pre-Hubble. It's pre-shuttle program, because they talk about that. Hopefully they'll get this space shuttle program up and running. So that tells me, again, it has got to be 75 or so when he's writing this book, because they were just really kind of getting around to planning this out. Skylab is still in the air. It hasn't fallen yet. So they're talking about Skylab. They're talking about, maybe if we had shuttle missions. And they're talking about the Soyuz space station, which is up there, which is, so it's all 70s technology. As I was reading this, I'm like, oh yeah, the shuttle, there's Skylab.
No, those Soyuz fuckers still work. I mean, we got them attached to the International Space Station as the lifeboat.
Yep.
If you need to get off the space station in a hurry, there's a Soyuz escape capsule, for landing on the ground. Although sadly, they made them take the gun out of it. Are you aware of the gun they made them take out of the Soyuz capsule?
Yes.
And it was, the best part is it was a survival gun. It was a super rugged, fired 3 types of ammo or something like that, survival gun that you can't have a gun in space at the space station. What if the Russians take over the space station? I'm like, okay, that didn't seem likely, at least, because who wants to fire a gun in a space station?
Not somebody smart.
Yeah. Number one. But the idea that the Russians had it because they dropped a capsule into Siberia, lost it off course, and then the crew got stuck for 2 days fending off wolves in the taiga because they were unarmed and, stuck in the cold. Yeah, no wonder the Russians wanted a survival rifle in the damn Soyuz capsule.
Holy cow. It totally makes sense. But it's all that 70s technology, so it's definitely written, it was before all that, before Hubble, everything. So yeah.
So there's all that inertia to overcome, trying to convince people to take it seriously, right? Because people look at Armitage and the crazies and go, well, they're stupid and crazy and panicking. They can't be right. So they write off the danger.
But they also didn't want to tell them either, because when Harvey Randall is interviewing at JPL, he's interviewing the two. Well, the main will be not Dan Forster and Charlie Sharps. Sharps and Forster, the ones who do the whole thing with the hot fudge sundae and do the calculations, and the whole thing. Sharp's like, well, it's getting close, but Forster the whole time is like, it's going to hit. He's like, I've done the calculations. He's like, there's a 0% chance. There's a 0% chance it's going to hit, but there could be a 500,000 mile margin of error on that. But it's going to hit. He's like, it's going to hit, and they're like, no, because Dan Forster is like this super hyper intelligent dude. He's their smart guy. Like, these are scientists at JPL, and they're like, oh, they made some comment to that. They're like, these guys say he's the genius, and these other guys are all like geniuses as well. So this guy's like hyper intelligent. This Dan Forrester character.
Was Forrester the diabetic, or was Sharps the diabetic?
Forrester was a diabetic.
Yeah. We remember him. He's the wizard.
He's the wizard. Yeah, we'll get to that. How they call him a magician, but so he's saying that, but they're kind of like, well, we don't know about that. But people are kind of like, Jellison's like, well, let's. He has his age, like, well, let's supply, but not do enough to seem suspicious,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's a half measure because we're trying to keep it secret. And if we've learned anything from, say, watching The Crazies, when the government decides that the most important thing is for it to be secret, it's a lot harder to get anything done.
Exactly. So all this is building up with the characters, and there's a lot of throwaway characters that you meet in the beginning. Like, there's this serial rapist, stalker, murder guy that we were introduced.
Who's definitely based on the Hillside Strangler, don't you think? From the 70s in Los Angeles, it's like Richard Ramirez, all over again.
Yeah, I don't remember the characters.
I don't remember his name either, but he was clearly based on that.
Oh, Fred Lauren.
Yeah.
They spent a lot of time on that character, but after the fall, because there's a lot, there's a lot of characters that were in there that are gone because after Hammerfall. So he's good about that, spending time on characters, but well, you know what, they were in the wrong place at the wrong time, so you lose a lot of these characters. So it's a lot of build up and a lot of precaution, and people are trying to take it seriously but not panic people.
Yeah, but there's that moment, and I believe it's I'm trying to remember it's a documentarian whose name is
Harvey Randall.
Harvey Randall. There's that one moment where Randall tips.
Oh yeah. He's like, let's be prepared. But by the time he tips, most of the store stock is sold out. So he stocks up on things that he thinks is smart. Like, he stocks up on salt and a lot of all kinds of other things for preserving and staple stuff. And then he also buys a shit ton of beef, sides of beef, and he starts making beef jerky. He starts drying it in the 2 ovens, and his wife doesn't know it, and he's she's freaking out. And the classic, one of my absolute favorite line in the book was when he's making beef jerky. He says, a good strip of beef jerky is bone dry and hard enough to kill if you file the end to a point.
Yeah. And that moment where he makes the beef jerky is that moment where his wife realizes that he thinks it's going to happen.
Yeah.
You know, he's been reassuring her. And then the next thing you know, he's like cooking all the meat and he's cutting the strips. And it's just like, we're going to need this. You know, we're going to need this right now.
Oh, yeah. To where he even, his neighbor, I don't want to say Corky. His neighbor is, Gordy Vance. His neighbor is the scout troop leader, and his kid's like a Boy Scout. And Gordy's like, yeah, I kind of was planning on going up into the hills. He's like, yeah, take my son. And they go on a hiking trip right before the hammer falls.
And I want to point out that there is a dramatis personae in the front of the book. Thank you, Larry Niven and Jerry Purnell, for giving us 2 pages of character names and their jobs so you can keep up with all of the characters in this book.
Yeah, Mark Chescu. It's Chescu, Mark Chescu. But
I was wondering if the audiobook gave a better pronunciation.
Yeah, that's what it was, Chescu. Now that I saw it written again, I was like, Chescu.
Okay.
Yeah, Chescu is like Harvey Randall's like he's like a kind of a biker / hippie / I was in the Navy, but I don't want to do nothing. I ride motorcycles and I just kind of like live in the moment kind of guy, you know, but he can kind of do a lot of stuff. He's kind of handy, you know?
Yeah. He resurrects that character very much in Footfall. Do you remember the biker in Footfall?
No.
There was a guy who's a welder, who's a biker, and he turns up in Footfall as a guy who escapes the initial devastation of the alien invasion and eventually gets hooked up with the team that's building the Orion ship to go up and attack the aliens again. So anyways, I always thought that Mark was very similar to that character that was, kind of an aging biker, somebody who might have been hard, super hard once upon a time, but is, a little softer. He's certainly a lot softer in Footfall as a guy with a bad back, and there's all this, talk about that. There's a big sort of whole plot line about how his back is terrible, but he fights through all that pain to get the job done.
So he's one of the main characters. Harvey's the main character. Tim's the main character. Tim's, gets this, there's a lot of convenient coincidences, people getting, connecting with each other, during the thing. And
let's also mention Gordon up on the mountain.
Oh, Gordon Vance, his neighbor.
Yeah, the banker, the president of a bank, who as Scoutmaster goes up prior to Hammerfall, planning to do what?
Oh, jump off a cliff because he's embezzled a lot of money and is going to go to jail.
Yeah, his life is over. And just as he's about to jump,
the hammer hits. Earthquakes, tidal waves. So
Lenny Bruce is not afraid.
Yeah. So they're like, so we meet all these characters. Again, it's very 70s. Like I said, we Aleem Nassour, he's running like groups of because everybody's preparing and leaving town, so they organize into like robbing all these honkies, expensive houses and stuff. They have like a big group of I think they have like 5 or 6 vans. And
well, it's organized. It's like organized crime. He went from being a political organizer to being a criminal.
Yep.
And it's like, well, we'll never get politically organized, so we're just going to steal shit. And he and his people are robbing houses. Isn't there a point where he's like, the hammer hits and he's like, okay, put the fucking TVs down and grab all the food.
Yep.
Because, but why? Because it's over. Because there's nothing going to be on that TV ever again.
Oh yeah, they dump all the junk. He gets him on the radio. Get everybody to meet at such and such point. He was a pretty good leader. So
yeah, he's very organized, and saves his people. Gets his people, his men, and their families out of LA before the tsunamis hit.
Yep, because everybody knows when it hits. So basically, So we're leading up to that. Everybody's trying to get here, trying to get there. So basically, you get to meet all these characters. You meet what's going on. You get to learn about them. And again, some characters continue on, some characters don't. So the hammer hits multiple, and during this time, we have the astronauts, 2 U.S. and 2 Soviets in the Hammer Lab.
And let's point out that one of the points that Larry Newman has is it's the first black American astronaut.
Yes.
Which, again, to date it even more, they make a big deal out of it.
Oh, he makes a huge deal about it. And, because, racism is still, well, now that it's not predominant now, but it was like even worse, but it's in the 70s. It's still,
far more institutional.
Oh yeah, I mean, because we just left the civil rights movement less than a decade ago, so it's still pretty predominant. So during the whole time they're reporting to JPL, they're trying to observe and they're seeing that, it's like, oh yeah, no, we're making these projections and they're realizing that this thing is gonna fucking hit, because they're seeing chunks of it because it's broken up are like the size of mountains, and the west side of the European side of the planet from the Atlantic on gets hit the heaviest. It hits the Mediterranean, the Soviet Union, China. You get hit in the Pacific. So they're seeing these hits happen, and he really gets into detail about how it hits, and as they're going over, they can still see these craters in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean because there's so much lava and steam pouring out of the crust that it's keeping back the ocean's waters. Because it's just basically just steaming it, and it's throwing so much steam into the air. So those are hitting. It's hitting fault lines. Tidal waves are happening. Like they give a lot of allusions to all the things that are happening. Like there's a couple of guys in Greece who are like archaeologists, and they discover something, and the guy they're watching the comet, and they're seeing stuff. The tail, and then there's like a bright flash. And that's basically coming through the atmosphere. One guy's blinded. They're on this high mountain, like somewhere in Crete or something like that. And he's basically just hold on to me because and they're basically having their last moments because he sees this fucking tidal wave coming through the Mediterranean, just wipes them out.
Yeah.
Or actually, no. I think they died before the tidal wave hit because there was so much there was basically lava, the earth cracked and the lava and steam poured out and killed them before the tidal wave even hit. There's a lot of that. There's this is you were reading before, the whole Nile Basin basically is underwater.
Yeah, I can't remember if it's underwater because the Aswan Dam collapses and this giant tidal wave rolls down the Mediterranean, or is it because the strike in the Mediterranean drives the water up the Nile? Either way, they're both. Everything from the cataracts to the delta is a dead zone. Everybody's dead. It's just, that's all there is to it. And what was the most, there's some really freaky moments during Hammerfall. The guys in the spaceship watching these mountains, being hit, knowing that any minute they could be fly swatted by a chunk, and it's going to be over like that. They won't even know it happened. So there's that was pretty freaky. But what for you was the absolute pinnacle of freaky moments from Hammerfall?
Oh, I can tell you that's easy because there was a strike in the Pacific, and while this was happening, they were expecting all these surfers were expecting all these tidal, all these big waves. So there were some big waves. So basically, you got all these surfers out in the water, and this tidal wave comes. The water starts to pull in. They start paddling out even farther than they are to try to get up on the crest of the wave, and there's a lot, a lot of them don't make it. A lot of it. So basically, there's just this 100-foot tidal wave or 200, 5. It was high, super high tidal wave, and these guys are going up this tidal wave, and then a lot of them start surfing it. They're surfing this tidal wave because he's trying to get over. He thinks he's going to be able to get over the top. This one character, he can't. It's too far because it's too big. So he just starts riding the wave, and he gets all these Zen moments about, I can't remember his quotes, but he said something about, when there's nothing left, nothing left to fear, and all this stuff, all these good lines.
It's like, well, I'm gonna have the best ride on the biggest wave of all time. That's it.
Oh yeah, and he's riding this tidal wave over Los Angeles, over the Golden, because it's huge, and he's on. And eventually, as they're going, a lot of them start dropping off, and he's the last one left. But he gets like 2 miles inland before he loses it, and he basically
he's hit by a building.
Yeah,
he's an office building, hits him like a giant hand, just slaps him, or something like that before the wave crests. It's like, where does the wave crest in Simi? Not in Simi Valley, but it crests in the mountains just behind Los Angeles. It fills the entire Los Angeles basin.
Oh yeah, and during the time, because there's other parts where the characters are trying to get somewhere, and there was a lot of like doomsday, people preaching and stuff, and they're seeing this tidal wave coming, and they're basically dead. There's once they see the tidal wave, there's nowhere for them. So it's funny how one of them says that it looks like they talk about how it looks like he sees somebody surfing across the wave, and then he also sees, hey, look at those people down there in the robes, like they see each other,
Yeah, the idea that the people are trying to leave town, and the doomsdayers, or the religious types, didn't they like chain themselves together across the freeway to force people to repent so God will spare us? And people just want to get out of the kill zone. And I'm thinking, if I'm see the tidal wave coming and there's some dildo in a robe who chained himself across the freeway that kept me from getting out of downtown Los Angeles, I'm spending my last moments beating him to death.
Oh no. They are chased and shot and beaten. Oh yeah, because these people know they're not getting out and they're going to die. So they take it out on them.
Yeah. So yeah, the tidal wave moment was the one for you that was just like, okay, that's.
Oh, the guy freaking surfing, hanging 10 on the ultimate wave, man. It's kind of like he's like freaking Patrick Swayze in
Point Break.
Point Break, it's the 100-year storm, man. What is it? What's his name? Cody or something like that. I can't remember.
Brody from the original movie. I don't know what they're going to rename him in the new film.
Oh, fucking piece of shit. But yeah, that was my moment during that. But
you love a remake. That's Jared's favorite thing. Is take a good movie and do it over badly.
Oh yeah. So they talk about how basically, because a lot of strikes hit the Atlantic, and they're basically everything from the East Coast to the Appalachians. Basically the waves go up to hit the Appalachians. So everything before that is gone.
Florida, gone. The Gulf Coast, there's a strike in the Gulf of Mexico. Texas, gone. New Orleans, Mississippi, Alabama, gone. The waves are coming up the Mississippi Basin, and hitting St. Louis.
Oh, it's a mess. England's gone because it's so low, and up India up through India.
Up to the Himalayas.
Up to the Himalayas it went. Yep. So they
then the Russians and the Chinese have a nuclear exchange.
Oh yeah. While all this is going on, because also they talk about how some of the tidal waves went around 3 times. Like the ones like from the below, they had such enough energy. This kept going. They went around one of them went around 3 times before it found. Like the third time around, it was only like half as big. Because it lost a lot of energy. But yeah. So during that time. Yeah, the Chinese decide that, what, because there's going to be snow, they're going to come down to us. We don't want them here. So they start. So the Russians had already been hit near Moscow. So the Chinese start launching missiles at them because we're like, we don't want them here. Let's kill them. So besides the floods, the earthquakes, wholesale mass destruction of people in the world, the Chinese go, let's add insult to injury. Hey, cripple, nice tie. Let's add insult to injury. Okay.
Sorry. Hey, cripple, nice tie.
Well, that's insult. Wow. That's insult to injury. So they again, folks, I've never claimed to be PC, but it's a joke I heard somewhere else. But so they start to nuke Russia. Russia strikes back, and during this time they're seeing the missile strikes up in the space station. The Americans are flipping out the Russians, and finally figure out no, they're shooting at China. And during this time then they also talk about the guys in the U.S. missile bases, and they get new codes to launch at China because the Russians were able to contact like Looking Glass or NORAD, and they asked for our help. They're like, listen, the Chinese nuked us. We're not launching at you. We are launching. They said, we are launching, but we're launching at China. If you could help us out, that would be great. So then we pile on top of China. So basically, there's like nothing left of China.
Yeah, if they weren't going to get hit by the tsunamis, then we fixed that problem.
Oh, yeah, we took care of that. That's
So there's a little mass murder added on top of, all the other death and destruction. Again, I want to read my favorite moment out of the whole novel, just in case you thought everything was going to go fine in the Middle East. My favorite paragraph: further to the east, the Palestinians and Israelis suddenly realize there are no great powers capable of intervening. This time, the war will go to a conclusion. The remnants of Israel, Jordan, Syria, Saudi Arabia are on the march. There are no jet planes and little fuel for tanks. There will be no ammunition resupply, and the war will not end until it is fought with knives. And I'm like, I hate to say it, but there's certain folks in that region who will be happy with that outcome.
Oh yeah, that's another classic scene from there, and that, you know what? I hate to say it, but I think this is exactly how it would go down.
There wouldn't be any. Quick! We should all work together to survive. Just right at each other's throats immediately. Zero.
Here's our opportunity. Go.
Yeah, and the idea that, and it's a very 70s.
Oh yeah.
Remember, 73 war, right? Just happened. Just a few years before.
Is that the 8-Day War or
6 and 7 day wars? I think 60 whatever is the 6-Day War, where Israel snuck attack everybody they were building up for an attack, and Israel struck first. Second war in 73 is the Israelis get jumped by ambush. This time they get sucker punched, and it was much tougher for Israel on that one, but they still won it. But it's only been it's only been 4 years since that war. Camp David hasn't happened. Jimmy Carter hasn't gotten Menachem Begin and Anwar Sadat to shake hands and be nice. Besides, Egypt's not doing too good right now, so we won't be hearing from Anwar Sadat. And there was definitely an attitude, I felt, in the 70s and 80s that if it wasn't for the fact that the Soviet Union, the Soviet bloc, and the American bloc existed to keep these guys from fighting it out to the last man and dragging us into it, if it wasn't for that, they would have fought it out to the last man, and just finished it some horrible way, kind of like, you know what I mean? The only thing keeping them apart was great power politics, which isn't necessarily true because Soviet Union's gone and we still haven't had any kind of, we haven't had a conclusion. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So that's again one of those things which kind of does date the book a little bit, because it is, again, I mean, there are certain things, like I said, all that stuff that are very, but you don't have to be a person who grew up in the 70s to really.
And there's hippies. Remember, when we get up to the stronghold, we get hippies. We get genuine hippies.
Oh yeah. So it is kind of, looking back, when I read it in the 80s, it didn't dawn on me, but coming back to it 30 years later, over 30 years later, God, I'm getting old, but over 30 years later, it could seem a little dated, but it's still, that it doesn't really affect the, the quality of the story, No,
not at all. Not at all. The post Hammerfall, the biggest story arc after the Hammerfall, is the biggest story arc the New Brotherhood Army, or is it the Stronghold?
It starts off with the Stronghold and them trying to pull their shit together, but then the New Brotherhood Army comes along. Well, actually, it only started out. Well, folks, okay, so the Stronghold is. We mentioned Senator Jellison earlier. He was, the one who kind of helped support all the stuff. Now, he has like this big farm and ranch. He's like in I forget what valley he's in. He's in this valley with these mountains.
He's not in the San Joaquin Valley because that's a lake. By
That
the
becomes a
time
lake. He's near this. They're near this. The San Joaquin's not very far from them, so they're in their valley, and there's a lot of farms, and they're trying to organize, and they have a really good, like Senator Jellison's Al Hardy is his aide, is very good at what he does, and he likes things neat, like he says. They're trying to organize, like, okay, we got all these people here, and then there's also another big family there called the I just forgot their name. George, is it the Carson? Not the Carsons.
I'm looking. I don't remember.
It is. I just read the damn thing.
Christopher?
The Christophers. Thank you.
Okay.
The Christophers. They're like the big family in the valley. So there's a little tension there, but it's like, listen. So they basically close off the valley, because they're like, all this traffic's going to come here. We can't feed everybody. So they're trying to get their shit together to be able to survive the winter because they know how bad it is. And the thing is, right after the hammer, so much water, because that's what people like. They're like, at first there's a lot of mud coming up, and then there's a lot of salt rain. It rains for like weeks. It's like probably a week is heavy rain, and then it lightens up a little bit, but still, like, for weeks it's raining every day. Yeah, heavier at the beginning, but then eventually it gets to the point where it's like it's raining every day. There's always mist, but at the beginning, that's why there's so much flooding. Dams broke. The overfills. Even though, like, a lot of the engineers open the overfills, like, channels, there's too much water.
It's a good thing Three Gorges didn't exist at the time. Of course, all those nukes, that didn't do China any favors either, but something like the Hoover Dam would have collapsed, and the Colorado River would have just washed out to the Sea of Cortez.
Well, because part of it, too, is the rain that was coming was warm. So all the snow in the mountains was getting warm rain on it, so that started melting. There was such an influx of water. It wasn't just from the tidal wave; it was from the rain and all the ice, all the ice and snow melting too. So they were getting it from everywhere, and people were trying to get away. Like,
which means that all the water sources, the rivers, are actually going to be short. The next year or more are going to be short a snow cap to melt and slowly feed the rivers, because all the mountains have been stripped by a combination of salty, warm water that's going to scour those watersheds or those snowpacks off. That's an even more horrible prospect too. That, okay, you're drowning this year, next year you'll be dying of thirst.
Possibly, but also a lot of snow came a lot early too. So because of the cloud cover, so they might be okay there, but it's definitely a risk for sure. And a lot of the main characters you see are trying to, like, Tim Hamner's like, hey, let's go to, like, well, first he wanted to go to his observatory, but that got what do they say? What do they say when you take something that doesn't belong to you? It's requisitioned. That got and it got requisitioned by his freaking his assistant.
Yeah, he gets up there and the guy's got a bunch of guns and he's got a lot of blah blah blah. Rich boy, I fuck you. Yeah.
Yeah. So he lost his shit. So they go, let's go to Senator Jellison. Harvey Randall's trying to get to Senator Jellison because he only gets there because Mark Chescu and his girl, well, there was three of them, but they lost one of them, are trying to come back to try to get Harvey because they want to help save him because they're in the mountains on their motorcycles. Harvey comes back and he comes back to a horrible situation, because of his wife is gone, all his supplies are gone because there was a van of, like, a biker gang, kind of almost like from Dawn of the Dead. They got a van and motorcycles and they were going around just raiding everything. They weren't even Alim and Nassour's people. It's like a whole different biker gang.
Yeah, they're not even in the New Brotherhood Army yet.
Yeah, so there's all kinds of crap going on. So he's trying to get this, like, they're all trying to get to Jellison's place eventually. Even at JPL, which got destroyed in the earthquake. You had
doesn't that shitbag Marty Robbins, the assistant who takes over the observatory, doesn't he turn up in the New Brotherhood Army at some point where they scooped him up and forced him to be a cannibal or something? Or I can't. There's somebody. I just remember somebody being who's like a dildo at one point, and then the next thing you know, they've been scooped up by the New Brotherhood Army.
Yeah, I don't remember who it is.
Oh shit! You know what I'm thinking of? I'm thinking of the gang of raiders at the beginning of the postman who robbed the main character of all his stuff, and then later the main character encounters the one brigand he talked to in the Holonists. He's been drafted by the Holonists that is like some, he has to be some butt boy and shine shoes and fetch pails of water or something, where he's been, I think that's what I'm thinking of, not the caretaker.
Well, no, there is some other character. I can't remember what his name is now, but yeah. So all these people are trying to get up there. Forrester's trying to gets there. Well, there's what was the other? Not Forrester. What was the other side? I always forget his name. The other side.
Sharp.
Sharp is like trying to get people like, hey, we're gonna go to Jellison's place, but Dan Forrester's like, no, I got to go home first. I got to take care of something. So
and what I loved about the big convoy that gets together from Sharp is, Forrester's like, I can't go. I got to do my mission first. I got to go home. And they're like, good luck, and they load up, and there's this big description of how many people and how many guns and all this stuff, and they vanish. I mean, I remember, I think Forrester just sees them go, and then they just disappear into,
they never make it.
Yeah. Well, all we know is they don't make it. They just vanish.
You don't know where they are. And Forrester's going back to his place to get his, because he had power for about, 12 hours, or like one night or something like that. But he's preparing books because he's like a bookworm and he remembers everything. So he's preparing all these books for the long term, like how to rebuild civilization. That's his big thing. He's like, we got to rebuild civilization. We got to rebuild. So he has all these books on how to make things work, how to fix things, how to do this, how to do this.
Principles of electricity, principles of mechanical engineering, basic science and hard engineering books.
Hundreds of books. He basically prepares them for long storage. His thing is like bug spray, and then he seals them in like 4 Ziploc bags.
I forgot about the bug spray. So
bug spray.
Yeah.
Bug spray and something else, maybe mothballs. He puts in bug spray, mothballs, 4 Ziploc bags, and he winds up dumping them all in his like old septic tank because he had a new septic tank put in, so he still had this septic tank. Dumps it. He spends and this is killing him doing this because he's got bad feet. He's got he's a diabetic. He can't get the sugar. His insulin's going bad, and he's doing all this. And he wasn't a very strong person in the first place. So he does this for 2 days and dumps all these books. Then he starts to head to Forrester's, and he doesn't show up at or Jellison's. He doesn't show up at Jellison's camp till weeks later. You know.
Now, who was it that hooked up with him? There's one other character. Was it Mark, the biker, who finds?
Yeah, I think Chesku finds him.
Yeah, there's one other thing that happens to Forrester on the way. I think it's Forrester. It's either Forrester or Chesku. Is it Forrester who runs into the crazy army deserter?
Yes.
Who's just like, my unit went rogue and killed the captain, and I didn't, and then they've become cannibals, and goodbye. And he steals all Forrester's food and takes off. That guy's never identified, but I kind of had this weird feeling that maybe that was that shitty corporal who murders. Because remember, there's this thing where
Sergeant, that corporal's still there, at least.
Okay. Because I wondered if the shitty corporal who initiated the mutiny then later bails out.
No. He's still there because, that's another thing we encounter, folks. Is that there's basically was it a platoon maybe? No, I don't think it was that.
A company. It had to be a company. It had to be 100 guys at least, maybe 200 guys tops, because there was a captain, there's a top sergeant, multiple trucks. It wasn't a platoon. It was like a company.
So they're going back to base or something, and they're not supplied to be out in the rough. So basically the hammer falls, and then this one guy's this corporal's I'm going to kill the captain, and we're going to be in charge, or we're going to be rulers of the wasteland, because he's he's basically a prepper, crazy guy, fantasizing about the world coming to an end, how he's going to rule the wasteland,
Sadly, he's probably Red Boy and his dog.
Yeah, but it doesn't work out so well for him. He doesn't really get to do anything. So, but they have all these guys, and the problem, with it is they immediately, again, it's a bit of a trope, but they immediately go they go cannibal like almost immediately.
Well, they do this thing where they try to take over some farming community and they get their asses handed to them.
Yeah.
Because they've only got a basic load of ammo. They can't have an extended firefight. They only carry 100 rounds apiece or 200 rounds apiece, and then they're out. Or I guess 300 is the standard load of ammunition these days. But it turns out that they can't, have a standard, and they weren't carrying any food, so they're weakened before they even get into the fight, and so they end up eating some of their dead, which turns out to be, again, Larry Niven has a primer on why you shouldn't be a cannibal, because they eat the dead guy who was sick, and then everybody gets sick.
Oh yeah, because that's something that because they found a doctor who wasn't even he was just like I think he was like a gynecologist. He was like an oncologist or something. He wasn't really he wasn't just a regular MD.
It wasn't an immunologist. He wasn't an immunologist specializes in diseases. No, he was a guy who was a gynecologist. I remember them. Somebody keeps saying, "What do you know? You're not even a real doctor. You're a pussy doctor," or something like that. They keep insulting him. But yeah, now they got a guy who checks the corpses and finds out who's edible.
Because they were doing it at first because they had no food, so they totally go cannibal. And they keep him around to inspect stuff, and they talk about how when we find a place to settle down, we're gonna have to hobble him so he won't try to escape. Yeah.
And then that's the weird thing where we suddenly have the three problem groups come together. We got the deserters who turned cannibal because, again, no food, and there's a whole bunch of them who survived together. So they had those guys who are half crazy. They run into Sergeant Hooker knows.
Yeah,
they know each other because they grew up in the same neighborhood. Those two groups come together and cohese together, and then they bump into Dr. Henry Armitage's crazy people who went up into the mountains so that they could be, taken up into heaven at the end times, but got left behind. And Dr. Armitage has the good news for everyone.
Yep. And a lot of them believe it.
What is Dr. Armitage's good news, Jared?
Oh, that you're all angels of the Lord. You've been saved to finish God's work, And they talked about, listen, we've done some bad shit. We've eaten people. That's okay because the angels of the Lord could do anything. You're forgiven for everything, and you're going to help our message. So I think Hooker doesn't really want to join up with them because Hooker's like, this guy's crazy, but a lot of his troops believe him. So
they want someone to tell them it's okay that they ate a guy. I mean, they really want someone to show up and say, no, that cannibalism thing, that's okay. That's going to be all right.
So it gives them a bigger army, and it helps kind of keep everything together. And they build this army, but the thing is, they have nowhere to go because now that they've eaten people, and it's really heavy subject here is like they're tainted. Like people won't let you in, they won't talk to you. Like you've eaten people, you're done. So they have nowhere to go. So they're just going from place to place, and just they're freaking Mongols. They're just going from place to place, using up its resources and continuing to go on.
Yeah. And because the group gets so big, they show up in a place, they fight their way in, they eat all the supplies, and then they can't stay there.
Yep. And then they go on and they go on and they go on, and they indoctrinate people. That they stop being cannibalism their primary source of food, but they still do it as a ritual because of Armitage. They're all batshit crazy. And they say like some people like it, but they do it as a ritual because they're like, listen, if there's 10 people there, it's like, listen, you either join us or we kill and eat you. Your choice.
You either eat the stew or you are the stew.
Yeah.
And then once you've eaten the stew, congratulations, you're on our team forever.
Nobody's going to let you in because you've eaten people. So it's kind of a method to grow their army, and that's why they keep on getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
What really got me about that, and it's actually very accurate, is that, okay, when you hear about these militias and these child soldier armies in Africa, sure, there's some stories sometimes about crazy African tribal magic, sometimes involving cannibalism or are sacrificed in order to get a military advantage or be bulletproof or any of that kind of stuff. But the big thing that they use to solidify new recruits that are kidnapped, because they kidnap their recruits, you know, they just go into a village and steal all the kids. One of the ways that they solidify them into the army is through that exact same sort of thing. They make them do something so shameful that they feel they can't come home and return to civilization. And so they use shame as a weapon to force the loyalty of their kidnapped, essentially, you know, kidnapped recruits. And that's just what the New Brotherhood Army does.
Oh yeah, exactly. They do exact same thing. So that's building. So that's going on. You know, Senator Jealous is trying to build. They also, I don't want to reveal too much of the end of the story as we're going on here, but
I like the idea of building up to what the climaxes of the story is and leaving it at that.
Yeah,
because these things are all on a collision course.
Yeah, they're all going at the same time. There's also earlier in the story talk about they're building a new nuclear power plant in the San Joaquin Valley. That comes into play. Power is important to help build civilization. Dan Forrester gets to the Jellison Ranch, and they realize how valuable he is. So, you know, they want to use him to, you know, because he gets there and he's like, well, I can either help you make these weapons to fight, you know, the cannibal army, or I can make it penicillin to save my life. You know,
insulin. Yeah, there's a choice between insulin or save everybody. And Dan Forrester goes with save everybody because he's a goddamn steely-eyed rocket man. That's why.
Oh, he was. By the time he got there, he was on death's door because he hadn't had insulin in weeks, and you know, so that's going on. Our friends in space come down, you know, so they're involved in the story too, and two of them are Russians. And when you're reading the book, it's like, oh, they might not like the Russians, and I'm like, why? Oh, because we're still in the height of the Cold War. So you got the Russians who are coming down. They're involved. You got the nuclear power plant. You got, you know, the Forrester. You know, they're trying to build weapons. Some interesting stuff happens to Gordon Vance. He's up in the mountains with the scout troop. Harvey Randall, you know, because he hooked up with his neighbor's wife. Not hooked up, but they found each other, and they look for their kids. Well, he loads up to look, and some interesting dynamics have changed with Gordy and the scout troop.
His son doesn't want to go home with him because in the mountains, he's a man.
He's a man. They're their own people. So they formed their own little fucking tribe up in the mountains, and you know, some interesting stuff with that. You know, read the book and you'll find that out. So you got that dynamic. You have they're picking up communications of like, we've heard of 5 different people claiming to be president. You know,
and who has the best claim?
Colorado.
Yeah, the Speaker of the House of Representatives is alive and at Looking Glass, or looking at Crystal Palace.
Yeah,
they're at NORAD headquarters outside of Colorado Springs, and they make a point of how much military throw weight is based in Colorado.
Yeah, so they have a lot of, you know, so nobody's gonna fuck with them, you know, so they lay claim. So I mean, there's a lot of moving parts, and it's all building to, you know, of course, a final.
Do you remember who any of the other 5 people claiming to be president were? Just out of curiosity,
they mention it, but
I always want to find out that it's like, you know, again, some mayor has declared himself king, or some governor has declared himself emperor of the Kansas.
Well, I think there was one group. The guy basically is like some kind of claims himself like some kind of Roman leader or something like that. There was some real. They talk about a couple of real crazies. Like, hey, I like so and so. He had some good ideas, you know, because he was like a total crazy person, you know. And you meet some other people of authority, because basically, there's a lot of people say that Senator Jellison in this area is like he's the main guy because he's a senator. You know, the governor of California, or the deputy secretary of California is somehow involved with the cannibal group, because they. Oh,
that's right. Yes, because they're like, no, we're the governor of California because we have the deputy secretary of agriculture or Detroit, but it's, you know, and since there's no Sacramento and there's no governor, he's the governor of California. They've got some guy that they're parading around in front of the army and saying that we're the real government.
Yeah, we're the real government.
That.
Yeah, and so they fed him the stew, so he can't, So they got him, claim, which is interesting. Around the nuclear power plant, the San Joaquin, I think the mayor of San Joaquin is there. So there's some people with.
Wasn't it something about like the people in the San Joaquin power plant were like L.A. mayor? It was like
It was like
the L.A. mayor and the LAPD are out there, or a section of it. Yeah,
because this power plant fell under our jurisdiction, so it's ours. When they saved the power plant, because basically it's interesting. It's basically what they do, because it was still under construction, so there's a lot of construction equipment there. So just do the math. You'll read what happened. So it's very interesting, and a lot of survival stuff. But I think the thing I didn't like about that last third half of the book was it got kind of choppy. It was like there's a lot of time hops. You
wish that instead of being 1/3 of the book, that it was half the book.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the only one real fault I find with it. It could have been, instead of spending most of the book on the which is important, but maybe we could spend a little more time in what happened. I mean, it was very concise. He got to the point. This was happening. This was happening. It wasn't done poorly by any means. But it was just a lot of time hops.
Yeah, we still would have enjoyed just as much material devoted to all of those stories after the fact.
Yes.
Well, not that we have to hear every one of them, like Sharp and his team that drive off from JPL and disappear. We don't have to hear about what happened to them necessarily.
But I wouldn't have mind seeing it though.
Yeah. But at the same time, more detail would be good, because Niven and Purnell delivers it. They deliver it all the way down the line. Their attention to detail is beautiful, and it mostly reads as real. It really does. Dated perhaps, but only slightly.
Yeah, it's a very good. Like I said, we're not getting. We revealed a lot of the book, but there's so much more to this book. A lot more detail. There's a lot of dynamics. It's a very good book. It's readily available, folks. You can easily get the book. There's Kindle versions. There's hardback paper. You could get it anywhere. It's so easy to get your hands on this book. It's not like it's out of print or anything, because it's Larry Niven. He's a very well-known author, so this stuff's still in print.
Yeah. I've definitely got the 85 edition.
Oh, I got
83.
Mine's the 80. Did yours say 85 printing?
Yeah. 85 printing.
Mine's 80. Mine's 83. So.
And I do want to point out that this thing was on the list for a Hugo Award, but did not get it in '78, which I think is quite the shame, because it was pretty awesome.
Yeah, exactly. So, when we say it's a good book, folks, we weren't kidding. If it was on the list to get nominated, if it was nominated for a Hugo Award, it was very well received. Yeah, for
this
sure.
This ranks up. Wouldn't you say this rank? I mean, we've done our top, favorite books, but this one and Bryn, the Postman, it's tight. And Bryn only wins because it's all post-apocalypse, not pre-apocalypse.
Yeah.
That's why Bryn wins. But this thing, this is a brilliant piece of work. And chunky. At the time, when we were kids, we thought this is as big as a book got.
Yeah.
Before Stephen King came along and did away with the need for an editor, so he can publish 800-page novels every year.
Oh yeah, but this is a thick book, and another book I'm finally gonna start, because I got the audio book, because I just haven't, like I said, it works good for me because of some of my commute and stuff. I'm finally gonna get through War Day. Oh,
excellent! I think you're really gonna like War Day.
Yeah, that's one of I attempted to read it when I was in high school. For some reason, it just didn't catch with me for some reason at that time. So I'm going to come back to it now. So, Yeah. So again, folks, it's a good book to try to get a hold of. There's a lot of good books out there. Whether you said you listen to it or read it, but you could easily get your hands on this one.
And we'll admit we have a bias towards some of the older classics. I'll absolutely cop to that.
Oh yeah, because we had one of the Friends of the Apocalypse send me a message. I forget where, because he was I think he was like a teacher or something, and he was talking about he appreciates that we're very old school with a lot of stuff we talk about, and he did suggest about some more contemporary stuff, and I don't disagree with him, but again, we tend to go for the classic stuff that we read, because I see a lot of this stuff that comes, because a lot of stuff's just cranked out now. It's so easily, a lot of stuff is self-published now, and it doesn't really go through a lot of good editing processes, and I've seen a lot of stuff out there, and it just doesn't, a lot of it hasn't really ever really appealed to me. Maybe I should try to read some more contemporary stuff, because
we've got to stick our noses in it a few more times. I'm looking at I've forgotten the name of I haven't finished the Sleep Apocalypse story. The most recent Apocalypse stuff I read, I guess, was Wool and Shift. And you should take a listen to Wool. You should try Wool out. I think you'll be pleased.
Yeah, so I mean, they are right. We don't listen, because we're old and fussy, so we like a lot of the old stuff, but a lot of it's the classic, and that's where the foundations were. Because he mentioned some other stuff about, I'll have to go back to it, like, how about there's some young adult stuff out there that he, for post-apocalypse, and
there's the Afterblight Chronicles, for one, and if I'm not mistaken, like we said, Maze Runner technically is some sort of post-apocalypse.
Yeah. Thing. Yeah, he mentioned Maze Runner. I have read one kind of some young adult, like, well, again, it came out in the 70s. It was John Christopher, the Tripods trilogy.
Tripods was definitely young adults as well.
Young adult, but I read it back then. So, I just wanted to recognize, I can't remember. I'd have to find it. I don't remember his name. But it's like, we know we're fussy old grognards, and we probably should get on some more contemporary stuff. But, we will eventually. Just forgive us. It takes us a little bit longer to get into this. All this damn new kid stuff. So
we'll have exhausted our own supply of material, and then we'll be forced to move on to new material.
Yeah, that's true. So I wanted to recognize him for pointing that out, and we appreciate that. What else? Well, I don't really got much more to say about Lucifer's Hammer. At this point.
Except that everyone should go out and read it. If you're even remotely a fan of the Apocalypse, you should have read it.
Yeah, so definitely go out and read that one. And for next show, and as long as I'd like, because we went a little bit long between shows, I'd like to try to do one next week as well. If is your calendar free for next Monday night?
See.
Okay, I have hooked up with Stephen Lee, who is the co-author of the 77 Worlds RPG. It is a post-apocalyptic RPG that he worked with James Ward with. Me and him are going through the process of connecting, getting him on Google Plus, and seeing if we can get the Hangout to work for him properly like it should, because we can't have the same debacle we had with James. So,
we worked our tails off to make that work.
So me and him are connecting to get that to work. So it's 77 worlds, folks. It's basically science fiction, far future. There were 77 worlds that the humanity populated. There was an alien apocalypse that destroyed a lot of our known universe. And the basis of the game starts with on the moon, where they had these basically kind of a Larry Niven Dream World or Westworld type of situation, where they have these fantasy theme parks, like Egyptian world and these different worlds, and that's where you kind of start off with these characters living in these domes. They had I think one's the Egyptian, there's like a Roaring Twenties gangster one, so that's where the game kind of starts off there. But then also they're expanding more. They're doing there's basically it's not Gamma World, but it's basically Earth Terra,
expansion. To expand and rediscover the fallen Earth
Yep, they're working on that. And he'll tell us all about this, but we're going to get him on so we can talk about the game. They have an innovative, they have like a unique mechanic of using playing cards. So some games have used playing cards so before for instead of dice. So we'll talk about that. There's a Saturn shipyard. So it's I picked up the box. I haven't really had a chance to go through it myself, but it's very interesting. And they're producing. They just put out a novel, and and James Ward works on it. And Stephen Lee's also been in the gaming industry for decades as well. So he's a game writer developer as well. So we're gonna get him on the show to talk about, because again, it's post-apocalyptic. So we'd like to recognize and bring some attention to his creation. Some new post-apocalyptic gaming out there. So we're gonna get him on to me and Scott will of course pull a list of questions for him so he's not completely blindsided. He even said that it's like, yeah, a list of questions would probably be good, so when we go off track, we'll be able to get back on track, because he's watched the show, so he knows.
He knows what we're like. Yeah.
Exactly. So barring any technical problems on his end with getting him connected, we plan on next week, the 28th, having him on to do a show about the 77 Worlds post-apocalyptic role-playing game.
Excellent. All right.
So, and that's all we got for now, folks. And like I said, we'll probably do some more of these episodes of. I'm going to go back to some of these older novels, reread some stuff, and we'll do kind of a overview of a lot of the old good classic books. But I think before we do that, I think both of us should dedicate some time when we can to reading. Fractured Tales of the Apocalypse.
I'm almost done with it.
Yeah, I got to dedicate some more time because she sent that book. That was a year ago. So, and we've never claimed to be quick on anything, folks. So that. So, but we will.
As well, my Kickstarter backers know.
Yeah. So we will. So I think maybe that's because I actually, I got on my stupid Kindle. I should, at night when I'm, reading for a little bit before I go to bed, I should start plowing. I've read like one story, so I've been bad. So I think I'll read through it so we could give that a review and give it its fair airtime, because she did hook us up with the books, and she does deserve that recognition that because for doing that for us. So
there's one story in that is written in post-apocalypse speak. It's written in this broken language, slang jargon. Apocalypse speak that is really tough to get through because the writer doesn't pull any punches. You know what I mean? It's just the pigeon of the future because we don't have schools anymore. But it's challenging, but I thought it was good.
That's a very interesting concept, because we've talked about language on the show before. So that's pretty cool. So yeah, we'll see if I could get through that. I'll probably have some time because I got to take a little road trip on this weekend, so maybe I'll have some time to do some reading at night. So we'll get through that. But next week, again, folks, 77 Lost Worlds. And as usual, thank you, everybody, for listening. We appreciate your time. We appreciate you following us. Like I said, this is definitely a labor of love. It's just a passion, something we like to do. Like I said, we do it when we can because we enjoy it, and we enjoy the feedback. And then, like I said, if we don't get back to you on stuff or right away, it's just like we're like you. We got busy lives, and unfortunately, this is not our primary activity. I would love to if me and Scott could just do this once a week, every week, crank it out, and this is all we do. But we're both working slobs, and we got a lot of shit going on. So
you're gonna have to hook us up with a Patreon account before we can become independent broadcasters with all 17. Or maybe 35 of our viewers contributing thousands of dollars per episode. I'm sure between the 35 viewers we have, we can actually make this thing work.
Well, you know what? We actually have on YouTube. We now have 346 subscribers on the YouTube channel. It's not bad. We have almost 200 people who follow us on Facebook, so people do get to hear about us. And I'm actually seeing the count right now. Apparently, there's 8 people. It was high as 14 at one point, but we fluctuated between 6 and 8 people are actually watching this live, listening to us talk, which we haven't seen in a while. So
usually we think we're just recording it for the future, and they'll see it then.
Yeah, and
let's not bore our loyalists, our core loyalists. We're not going to bore you any longer. We're going to sign off. Jared, play us out, Piano Cat or whatever. Let's
Okay. So again, folks, thank you for joining us, and remember to be socially responsible. Like us on Facebook, like us on YouTube, share us, be socially responsible. Like things if you like them, and if you don't like them, don't bother not liking them. And we will. I am Jared the Apocalypse Nerd Wallace. He is Adam Bomb Glancy. We are both thanking you for joining us tonight, and we will see you in the Wastelands, and we'll see you next week, same time, same post-apocalyptic channel.